Welcome to the Left Wing Podcast. Will Slattery here with you, and tonight we'll be reviewing the opening weekend of the URC. Munster started off with a bonus point win. Ulster started off with a bonus point win. Connacht started off with a bonus point win, and Leinster rather, started off with a 35-0 shutout away to the Stormers. Not exactly what we expected there. So plenty to get in, all things considered. Luke Fitzgerald is joining me as always, as is Andrew Trimble for the first time ever on the Left Wing Podcast. Andrew, how are you?
I'm great to be here. That was a real slip of the tongue, but it felt like it was like out of routine. Someone's getting hammered. It's not Leinster, it's Ulster.
I'm just so used to saying it. But no, to be fair, it was a decent start for Ulster. We'll get into all the weekend's action. But first, Andrew, yourself and Luke would have been big enough rivals during your playing days. I was trying to think of your Ireland careers, and every big moment of yours and every big moment of Luke, the other was missing. I feel like you never were in the same place at the same time. Am I misremembering that, or was it always one of you guys?
We're not the same person, Will. Yeah, it's not like. Why do I never see those two guys on the same pitch at the same time
on the same podcast? Those guys have never been in the same podcast. There was so Lukey came. I remember Lukey arriving on the scene early, like obviously out of school. Lukey, 17, 18, whatever.
18, yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of thought, it'll take a wee while to get up to speed, and then he got up to speed very quickly, frustratingly, from my perspective. But and then I sort of remember feeling like I kind of dropped off, plateaued a little bit, like maybe 23, 24 years old, and Lukey just started to absolutely smashing it, and then I started like it was like existential. I have to revisit what makes me tick. That kid is absolutely flying, and if that's what it takes to play for Ireland, he's going to be getting all of my caps. So I remember having a bit of a crisis. Lukey kind of kickstarted that in my life,
and then the injury started for Luke, and you got back in. Is that how it worked?
Yeah. What age do you finish, Lukey?
I finished at 28. Yeah. 2016. Yeah, 2016. I went out on a loss to Connacht, so went out on top, Trimby.
Yeah, you packed a lot in a short career, so fair play.
I know it was great. Like we had such a good rivalry. Like there was because Earlsey was in there as well. He was kind of my age group. He kind of came on the scene. Like we played schools all the way up together. Then it was kind of Rob was obviously there. We had who else? There was Tommy, obviously, and yourself. We would have been competing, all of us together. It was a good group. It was, and we all actually got on very well. Even though we were obviously privately hating each other and trying to outdo each other every day on whatever training and matches and things, and watching. You'd always be watching to see how the two guys got on up in Ulster on the weekend, and I'm sure the guys were doing the same at the Leinster matches. It's kind of great. It was great. We obviously were talking about before we came on air, but we got a chance to catch up a couple of weeks ago playing golf, and we actually discussed it. We were having a bit of a laugh about it, kind of saying, actually, we just said the same thing that you said, Will, is that we actually never really had a proper concerted period where we were clashing or we were both injury free at the same time. Yeah, but all in fairness, as Tribute alluded to, like we would both have been looking at each other saying, "Geez, I really need to up my game." And I remember looking at Trimmy when I first came into camp. He was a bit of a physical specimen, as well as Tommy's obviously a big, tall guy and in great shape as well. And I remember thinking, "Oops, I think I better get back into the gym if I want to compete with these guys." So it's funny how when you both talk about it a couple of years later and there's nothing on the line, that you can be very honest. And we were both actually thinking the same thing. We need to up our games.
Yeah, we were probably more competitive in my early days. Oh, both of our early days. And then I started playing on the right wing a lot more after that. I kind of got a lot more comfortable on the right wing, and so I was kind of more competitive with Tommy. But it is actually unique probably that 5-6 players can all be good mates, be good for each other, and be really competitive as well. It was quite a unique environment. Obviously Schmidt in the middle of all that. I ended up my years were kind of 14, 15 and 16, and Dave Carney was on the left. You're obviously just on at that stage. But yeah, there was a good group of guys at the time.
Yeah, a good mix of wingers. I was looking this up earlier. Of all the club players who've played in the professional era, the top club try scorer in Ireland in that period is Andrew Trimble with 76 tries. Simon Zebo second with 73 and Shane Horgan third with 69. That's not a bad strike rate, Andrew.
That is I did not know that, and if I hadn't known that, I would talk about that a lot more. I'm more surprised than anyone.
Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't have that information before we went on that golf trip. I wouldn't have spoken to you because it would have been brought up straight away.
Zebo especially. That is brilliant news getting ahead of Zebo.
Yeah, well, see, he had a few tries for Racing 92 that aren't in the list. It's provincial tries only.
That's the thing, because Tommy had a load of tries at Ospreys as well. So
the Ospreys,
there's always an asterisk, isn't there, beside every statistic?
Look, take it, Trimby.
You should be putting that on your LinkedIn after this podcast as soon as this is done. I think that's definitely LinkedIn worthy. You made your debut 20 years ago for Ulster, and like, so does it feel? Is that like mad to tell you that, or does it feel like it was a long, long time ago when you started out?
Yeah, well, I just turned 40 last year, actually 41 next month. So it's definitely one of I guess maybe more like the stage of life you're at. I think you kind of think you're 10 years past your kind of your heyday of like kicking on in early 20s, whatever. And then it kind of just dawns at you, and then you just start talking in decades. So 20 years is just like the next stage, I suppose. Or when you've got kids, like, oh yeah, actually that's a lot longer ago than I thought it was.
Yeah, 20 years. Yeah, Luke, I think, well, you're almost 20 years since you started, Luke. I think it'll be next year for you. So, yeah, everyone, because it's funny even for me. Like I was in school when you guys started playing. And I remember well, and even thinking back to what age I was then is pretty mad to me. We might go on to the weekend then, Luke. Like, it's probably just as well for Leinster that the Ryder Cup was on and that the NFL was in Dublin. It's probably flew under the radar a little bit. It was 6 o'clock kickoff on Friday, so people mightn't have even been home from work by the time we turned on. TG4 was on here, and I think it was on maybe Premier as well. 35-0 Stormers Leinster. And, obviously didn't have the Lions players, but the team that was picked, I was talking to Rudd last week on the Sport Pod about it, and like we were talking about how odd it was, a mix of experience and youth, and some of the guys who were there, like Ryan Baird, Tommy O'Brien, Sam Prendergast, that could really kick on from last season and put down a marker, and other guys like Robbie Henshaw who were coming back from injury a chance there as well. And then to see them so blown away in every facet, like the line out creak, the scrum was a mess, defensively they were leaky, their attack was poor, their handling was sloppy. Like, I'm trying not to be hyperbolic because I don't think it means that they won't go on and have success this year, but I honestly think it was one of the worst Leinster performances I've ever seen, just in terms of every single facet malfunctioning. And despite picking what I considered to be a fairly decent team, like, what was your read on it? I just thought it was a bafflingly poor performance.
Yeah, look, I think, like, probably important to start out with, like, first match of the season really together, So I think that's probably sitting in the back of my mind when I'm trying not to be too harsh, because I think I was probably leaning in the same direction as you in terms of when I saw the team. I was thinking, well, there's plenty of quality there. They should be pretty competitive. And like, I know, fairly light on experience in the second row, but the back row, there was plenty of those guys kind of behind, and Slimani up front as well. I was kind of thinking there's enough experience in that pack to withstand the pressure that you're going to come under in South Africa. And then obviously you have Prendergast, a young guy, but he's an international. So and as is Luke McGrath. So and then you've obviously said Robbie Henshaw there as well. So yeah, like there was plenty of experience there to kind of guide some of the younger heads through. Just they really never got out of the blocks, and I just thought they never really dealt with the pressure of that the Stormers put on them. And they were lucky enough that it was only 35-0 in the end. Like, I thought that try, I mean, it was fairly obvious, but they looked like they were over the line once in the first half as well. It got chalked off, but they were pressurizing them for periods as well. It was a little bit disappointing. Like, they'd want to bounce back this week. I'm kind of leaning towards, as I said initially, not panicking too much about this, just given the stage of the season it's at. But that's the only kind of redeeming point I can really come back to you with on this. I think, like they'll like to get nilled as well. Lots of the teams let in points this weekend, and you probably kind of understand that, some new coaches and different things like that. So Leinster didn't have that excuse, but
it was the first time. It was the first time in 17 years since September 2008 that Leinster didn't score in a game. Yeah. And you played in that one.
Was really that was fairly astonishing. And there's plenty of attacking prowess out there. You know what I mean? You got Tommy O'Brien. I said we got Henshaw there. There was Osborne there. So there was plenty of guys who've played plenty of rugby for Leinster, and plenty of creativity there. Like maybe it did really probably come out in the, like I'd say that the dominance that the Stormers had in the pack was probably really what kind of constrained any of that. And then obviously they really lost heart once they conceded that fairly soft try from the kind of midfield cross kick that Prendergast puts through. I just really felt like they never really recovered from that either, and they just kind of didn't. They lost heart there, which was probably the most worrying thing. They didn't really look like they were trying, even they were not trying to get back in the game, but they looked like there was no avenue back in for them at all, and they just kind of kept conceding points. So it was very disappointing. And they need to recover quickly down there. Because some of the star power isn't coming back that quickly. That kind of way. You could find yourself kind of a little bit behind the 8 ball fairly quickly here, and having to have the perfect season, to really cement something like a top spot, which Leinster would be expecting to get. So it's not a good start.
Yeah, they have the Bulls and Loftus-Versfeld on Saturday, so it doesn't get any easier, and they will need to be a lot better on Saturday to avoid a similar defeat potentially. Andrew, what's your perspective on that opening game? Like, to Luke's point, first weekend, occasionally you see teams start slowly. I remember Leinster was maybe 2 seasons ago, got fairly comprehensively beaten by Glasgow in week 1. It didn't necessarily mean that the wheels were coming off or anything like that, but it just, when you look through, like, they missed 25 tackles, conceded 4 tries, conceded 16 penalties, 2 yellow cards. They only lost 3 lineouts. It felt like a lot more. I think they won some back, but it was really, messy ball. So it kind of, not a lineout loss, but definitely maybe not as clean as you'd like. Like, are you reading anything into it? Like, while the Lions guys were away, there's a lot of good players there who you would have thought had a great opportunity to put some pressure on guys who maybe didn't have the greatest Lions tours in the summer, and maybe they might give the coaches some kind of headaches coming back in. But it was the exact opposite. Any Lions player who's easing their way back in would have been thinking, well, look, I'm going to walk back into that team.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you guys in that I was taken aback. I was shocked. It's just not. It's because of what we've seen from Leinster. First game of the season, yes, I get that, but just from what we've seen from Leinster, they just don't behave like that. Usually all that summer is just prep, and they just hit the ground running, and they're so professional, consistent, and just that Leinster machine kicks into gear. So like you guys, I was shocked. Unlike you guys, I wasn't concerned. I was excited because I'd love to see the demise of Leinster rugby. To be honest with you, but yeah,
we're neutrals. We're neutrals, Trimby. We're neutrals.
I'm not, to be honest. I felt like, you look for excuses, and you guys are doing that as well. And Lukey, and you're talking through, you're looking for excuses, and you're going, well, there's actually not that many. There's enough experience there. There certainly has been that experience in the past, and they've smashed sides. They've put on a test match performance, like they mimic the starters. And that just wasn't there. You got Slimani for the scrum. You've got experienced back rowers, Scott Penny, Will Connors, Max Deegan give away that yellow card. Really, really kind of sloppy stuff. You've got Luke McGrath. You've got Sam Prendergast. And yes, to your point, Luke, Prendergast is young, but I mean, he's absolutely lauded by the Leinster, coming through those pathways, and they've been talking about this guy as a rock star, an absolute superstar, and he should be showing the leadership that you'd expect there. Then you look at back three. Tommy O'Brien's been, one of Leinster's best backs for the last season anyway. Jimmy O'Brien, a contender to start for Ireland in the autumn. So there's enough there in the spine of that team to feel like they should not take a hiding 35 points in the Stormers. I was surprised, and obviously joking a little bit about getting excited about the demise of Leinster, but it would be concerning. But it would only be concerning for me because of Irish rugby. If that has a knock-on effect to maybe what to expect in the autumn, it'd be very worrying.
Yeah, I agree, because if you go through the team, the only area of the team that is kind of, you could see what the team that was picked versus where it struggles, maybe the line out. Like Gus McCarthy, young hooker, Brian Deeney and Dermot Mangan in the second row. That doesn't surprise you then that the line out struggled. But Luke, every other area of the team, in particular the back line, I know the pack beat them up, but in the first half it was 6-0 and Leinster had a decent amount of ball. I thought the handling was really, really sloppy. Some of the passing was really, really poor. I thought Prendergast and Frawley throwing some kind of careless passes, kind of shaping to this kind of look good, flinging the ball out, but threw a couple of really crappy passes when the game was still in the melting pot. You look at the scoreline 35-0 and say, it was always out of reach. But like they were fortunate to be 6-0 down, but they were only 6-0 down despite having a bit of ball. And I was very disappointed with that element of it too. As the game wore on, the Stormers pack really got on top, and then it kind of became more that traditional when you see a horror show scoreline in South Africa and you're expecting you got completely minced up front, and it did eventually materialise. But I still thought the backline, as Andrew went through, was like, there's no one callow in that background. Like everyone there has played a lot of rugby, and some of the guys are really highly touted and key players, week in, week out, no matter what Leinster squad has put out there. So that element kind of took me aback a little bit as well.
Yeah, and like I think so. Sometimes there's probably an element to those guys trying to start quick as well. Like I mean, while Tommy O'Brien and Sam Prendergast are probably the two out and out starters when there's a full backline there. Frawley is still fighting to find, I think, a bit of identity in that team. He's been chopped and changed here and there. So that's, you could see him trying, like, he's going to be trying a few things probably here and there, which is, not always advised when you're trying to get back in a team or trying to cement your place. But you could kind of forgive him mentality wise and trying to try a few things, and perhaps even Henshaw now. But, I still think these are kind of international quality players. Like Larmour, you've got O'Brien and that 15 slot, as Andrew said, is a lovely player, lovely skills in that. So these guys should have been able to calm other players around them as well. Do you know, that kind of way? So like I'm finding it hard to figure out what it was. Did they not have a great preseason? Was there not a huge focus on the skills? Part of me would think that maybe the penalty count might be the most significant stat of the lot, and that kind of tells you maybe that maybe they haven't done a massive amount of fitness or physical work in the off season, because they were very sloppy at times in there, and maybe that fed into the handling and the confidence and all those kind of things. So there's probably hard to put your finger on, except for that really telling stat around penalties and yellow cards. So. Yeah, I think I'm putting it down to early season. And I think maybe some of these guys maybe wanted to put down a bit of a marker early when some of the kind of more established players are maybe not in the maybe not on deck. So I wish I had something clearer for you, Will. I mean, I think my initial answer around the pack getting really kind of decimated physically, that is also kind of a fairly key issue aside from the discipline. And it can be a bit of a chicken and egg on that one sometimes. But the game is certainly harder when you're not winning it physically, and that can feed into everything else too. So it's not just one issue. There's probably one or two that they probably need to get right pretty quickly. And South Africa is really unforgiving. They generally have some serious pace out wide. They generally are extremely physical. So if you're not kind of on the ball, it can become a very long day very, very quickly, as Leinster found out. Like they were kind of in touching distance until that try in the second half, and then all of a sudden it really got out of hand very quickly. So it's a tough place to go and play, and as you said, going to Loftus next week, unpleasant place to play for the away team. So they'll want to get up to speed pretty quick.
Yeah, they could be 10 points behind, like couple of teams at the top of the table. If they get 0 points in Loftus and a couple of teams pick up bonus point wins next weekend, they'll already be 10 points behind. As you say, that kind of chase for top spot, we've seen how important it is in the last couple of years. And I suppose, I'm just used to seeing Irish players and teams start the season like hitting the ground running. It's just very jarring to see such a kind of a systems failure all over the pitch from teams and players that we, as you say, come to expect them to just be really clued in and just kind of the machine to just keep on rolling. And I think the team that was picked, I thought they'd be able to do that. So maybe that's what's trying to be more so than anything else. Just that I expected a strong performance. Like a lot of these guys didn't play in pre-season. They only had one game against Cardiff, and only some of them featured in it. So a lot of them didn't play since the summer. But that doesn't usually matter. So I don't know. That's kind of sticking out to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's the typical model of Leinster? Be unbelievably consistent, be a juggernaut week in, week out until the business end of the season. So would you swap that as two Leinster supporters, maybe a little bit inconsistent at this stage of the season, cough up the odd loss on the road in South Africa, but build momentum as the season goes on. Like we've seen that modeled with other teams, but it's just surprising to see Leinster struggle. We all kind of expected them to do a lot better. And look, you touched on it. It could have been more. 35 points was probably kind to Leinster. It was 6-0 at half time, isn't that right?
Yeah.
It felt like Stormers left a couple of tries out there, at least 2, maybe 3 tries in the first half.
What's your view on Leinster generally, Andrew? Just like we talked a bit about them last week, like looking ahead to the new season. What when you're asked to assess why they haven't got over the line in the Champions Cup, for instance, over a long period of time, like what's your kind of underlying kind of reason for that?
Yeah, I suppose it's the same type of conversation. Why have Ireland not got past the quarterfinal? Show good form, consistency up until that moment, and the logical conclusion everybody always comes to is there has to be something mentally, something psychological that they're struggling with. The big occasion, they can't quite do it whenever it really counts. I just don't know. I feel like I feel like they have been the best team in Europe for 4 or 5 years now, and I feel like they've been successful. I know there was this kind of debate as well. Is it successful if they haven't won trophies, haven't won European Cups? Obviously URC last year, but I feel like if they continue to bang in the door, they're eventually going to knock it down. There's just not enough for me to say this team is a team of bottlers or this team can't cope with the big occasion. I just don't buy it. I don't feel like they're going to have one thing in their head in a quarterfinal and another thing in their head for a semi-final. I just don't understand how that could be the case. Maybe it is, but I just don't see how. Like, quarterfinal is still a big occasion. Semi-final is a big occasion. We get to past those. You've dealt with 2 big occasions, maybe going back to back with a few of them. But I'm not going to give you an answer here. But I'd be skeptical enough that there's some mental issue with Leinster.
Yeah, but the only thing is, though, Andrew, I think is it's make a lot of good points there, but they've done it with Ireland, and they make up the kind of majority of the Irish team. So you've got kind of grand slams in there. You've got big matches for Ireland. Now, they haven't always knocked out of the park, but they've got over the line more so in Ireland. Whereas I think whatever it is about the Leinster thing, and it's, it's probably not as simple as saying, it's maybe maybe a mental thing or they're bottlers or whatever. But there's always, there feels like there's something mental all the way. And that's not just for players. We talked about this last week, Will. And it was one of the things I said for Leinster this year is that what I don't want to be doing is, talking about a Leinster selection at a key moment. I don't want to be going, what? Why have they not picked Jordy Barrett? Or, for Munster a couple of years back in the URC, like, why have they not picked their first team? Like, what's going on here? Like, I don't want to have, and it's not just one thing with Leinster. Why have they not used the bench? So, it's not just a player thing here as well, I think. Yeah, it's not as simple as their bottlers, although there has to be something there because they've done it with Ireland, So the only thing you come back to then is it a coaching thing, That's the only other thing that's the one difference, say, between the success they've had in one camp, with probably more pressure with in an Ireland jersey than you would have in an interprovincial jersey, and it's the only kind of constant difference that I can see with both player groups is that has there been who does the responsibility lie with? Of course, it's going to be players to a certain extent, but I think there has to be a certain amount of, they haven't got it right off the pitch either sometimes, particularly around selection for me. So the players have taken a lot of abuse, and maybe it's not as simple as that. So, yeah, it is an interesting comparison to make, though, I think, with the Irish team.
Yeah, I wonder if there's something about maybe there's two types of games to win, or 2 types of occasions, or 2 types of approaches for rugby teams, and there's the kind of the week to week, back to back, just churning performances out and getting more results go your way than not going your way, and it's like the season long, just continue to perform like this, and over the course of that kind of sample size, that larger data set, you're gonna come out on top if you're good enough. And it's just a different concept or a different approach for a knockout game. This is a big one-off game, and suppose you look at all the different types of personalities in terms of the voice in the changing room. You think of Ronan O'Gara and you think of Razzie Erasmus. You think of these big kind of characters, these charismatic people, and they find a way to tap into something. And all sorts of stories come out after the fact with Leinster being accused by Rog of not allowing them access, what was it, wives and family members not having access to lands or whatever it was. There's always
put them out in the street, Trimby, yeah.
Yeah, there's always, there's always like some slightly unusual, but I think whenever there's a character like that, I did wonder in the past with Leinster, just because they're so consistent, such consistent performers, I wonder whenever it got to it, do they need a bit of madness? And we all know Rog is brilliant character. There's a bit of madness. There's a spark of creativity. There's something there. But I thought Jacques Nienaber would be that, and he hasn't provided that. Now he's had 2 goes at it now, but I thought he would be like, maybe he's not quite as mad as Razzie, but there must be a bit of South African madness in him there, enough to say, right, this is a big one-off occasion. Let's tap into something. Let's have a story for the boys this week to give them an edge, to get a big performance in this one-off game. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking out loud a bit there.
Oh
but
no, it's actually really interesting because nearly every single big match, you know yourself, the ones you win, there often is something. There's often something that a coach goes, I found a problem with the other team, or we've got a problem. We need to fix, it's and something that really refocuses the mind, or just something like that. Or someone, they humble you with something, or they come up with. You're right. It's like yeah, they kind of tap into something, and maybe they haven't been able to do that, as you say. Maybe they've been working in the percent. Maybe they have been working in the percentages, saying, well, look, if we just keep doing what we do every week, and we just show up what we can do, it'll be enough. Whereas on the big occasion, really, you probably have to maybe have a different lens on the week.
yeah, you got to roll the
And
dice, take a
yeah,
chance, introduce something different that you might look stupid, it might not be successful, but that's, I suppose, it's just that one-off game. Let's find a unique solution for this game, and it might not necessarily be the same solution that's won us the last 15, 20 games.
I think the problem last season might have been that they were saving that for the final, and they forgot about the semi-final, and then that was the one. Their big kind of wild card was maybe for one week later.
One will though, because I remember, because to touch on that point with Trimby, do you remember? You probably remember this as well, because Joe did it from time to time with Ireland Trimby. Do you remember? So he was always that kind of, managed defense, so like New Zealand in the quarterfinal against Ireland, not completely gung ho, but like up and manage them, get off the line where you can, but generally kind of speaking, you're kind of, manage the gain line, but not like off the blocks completely. But I always remember he used to throw in this thing, Will, where he would, in a week, a random week, he'd be off a scrum usually, where he'd kind of go, right, guys, we're not going to manage it. We're not going to go soft this week, or we're going to, as they put the ball in, everyone's going to shift wide and come off the line like mad. He always had one or two things to really get the opposition kind of, catch them off guard, or just change the look, or he'd have a tactic where he'd go in the air, or a weird move or something like that. He was really good, I think, at changing it up for a big week, or holding a good idea for a big week. It's such a good idea. I've never thought it. No one's ever said that, Trimby, on here.
I wonder though. It requires a mindset. It requires like an appetite to risk, because it's so tempting for Leinster. And every business end of every Leinster season, we talk about what happened the season before, but we kind of forget about it, or it just gets kind of buried a little bit, because they've had 10 months of smashing teams week to week, smashing them. So it's difficult then to say that's worked this season every single weekend. Let's do something different. Like, that's, you're brave if you're a coach and you introduce that. Well, but maybe that appetite to risk, or that bit of madness, is maybe what's missing. Again, we're speculating.
Yeah, well,
wildly here.
One thing that was, I suppose, in that category was, Andrew Porter, keeping him on the bench and bringing him on after 20 minutes. Like, that was something they introduced on Stephen's Day around then against Munster, that raised a few eyebrows, and then they tried it again against Southampton, but that first 20 minutes ended up being fairly disastrous. I think they'd conceded two tries before Porter was sprung off the bench. So that was kind of maybe an example of outside the box thinking that backfired. Obviously the Jordy Barrett one definitely had South African kind of fingerprints on it, like kind of keeping your best.
Use tactics, Will, and like game tactics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, like, I always remember.
I'm
Joe
just giving
Schmidt,
examples. Like, we're talking about them doing things.
Maybe you're right. Maybe they've tried that. Yeah. To me, I always think I'd love to see some tactics in the game. Like, I remember another thing Joe Schmidt used to do. He'd say, right, for 10 minutes, no one is going to go for a poach. Like, that's it. We're just going to hit the rooks, or we're going to stay out of rooks. Like, he would just change something up in the middle of the game where you'd kind of be going, God, that's such a good, like, for the opposition team, you're the whole time you're going, you might have been looking for where's Seanie O'Brien or where's Dricko. They're going to go for a poach here. But for 10 minutes, Leinster, we wouldn't have done that. We would have just said, guys, that's it. When you get a rook, we're just going to hit it, and it's only two guys in, and it just changes up the complexion of how the game is going, and gives a different look for the opposition. I always thought that was a brilliant bit of coaching. As Andrew said, for a guy who could kind of be seen as quite conservative, and maybe some of his selections were quite conservative, as opposed to, say, a Nienaber or a Rassie, who maybe could they take big chances with selections sometimes. I always thought Joe was actually quite creative and he did take chances and risks with his game plan every now and then, with kind of different ideas that he'd come up with. So Sorry to cut you off. I just thought it's an interesting thing that Andrew brought up.
Just
there.
when you're talking about Joe,
never really considered it.
just because when you're on the Joe subject, just out of interest, I don't know if any of you guys have seen much of Australia the last couple of weeks. Like, I've been fascinating watching them in the Rugby Championship. Like, the improvements he's made with Australia in such a short space of time has been staggering. Like, they haven't probably even got the results maybe some of the performances have deserved. Like, they were a little unlucky at the weekend, maybe a little unlucky to lose away to South Africa in one of their other games. Now, obviously, they won in South Africa too, which maybe balances a bit. But I've been so impressed with how well they've played. I don't know, Andrew, if you've seen much of them.
Yeah, I've loved watching them, and I've loved just, I suppose, like Lukey, you and we thrived under Joe. Joe brought the best out of me. You don't put words in your mouth, but he brought the best out of me, and there's a simplicity to what he did, but it's so effective. You just get better at everything, and then collectively, the whole team, it kind of snowballs, and you get momentum, and you get confidence from that, and it feels like Australia are kind of feeling that momentum and confidence, as you say. They were unlucky not to get a little bit more out of that game at the weekend, but and even the way they're probably playing with one hand tied behind their back at the minute, because their 9 went off early. Tate McDermott went off early. James O'Connor is not the solution. 39 years old. Skelton's not available. Valentini, he's back this weekend, I believe. But like, those guys make such a big difference. But just that phase play and that grunt and that ability to kind of get over that gain line and then put the ball into space, and they're very, very dangerous. But yeah, it's been brilliant to see. I came to the conclusion after the first test, I was like, no matter how good Joe is, and we all know how good he is, and we've experienced it firsthand, I came to the conclusion there's not enough talent in that Australian side. There's not enough athleticism. They can't win collisions, and I couldn't have been more wrong. He's turned them around completely, and it's been brilliant to see the impact he's had on Australian rugby, but rugby as a whole. Like, rugby is just about commercially viable. We need Australia thriving. We need one of the heavyweights in the world, and it's brilliant to see it happening.
I think he's the best rugby coach of all time. Like, actual rugby coach. Obviously, you guys have been coached by him. I haven't. I've just been observing his career from afar. But when you see what the impact he can make with a team, and he's not perfect, obviously. At the end of his Ireland tenure, people will criticise him for how the team played by the end and maybe getting found out. But I'm not sure if there's another coach in the world who could have gone into Australia and taken them from the absolute mess Eddie Jones left them in. And by, as you say, obviously, first test of the Lions was as a disaster, but by the end of the series, they were the better team, and they only obviously narrowly lost the second test and won the third test, and they've carried the form into the Rugby Championship. And while it hasn't been perfect again, I just think he's gotten them to a level. I'm not sure if there's many other coaches who have the technical proficiency to get a team without introducing a raft of new players, with the team that was pretty much there, and get them playing, kind of competing against the best teams in the world. Like, they almost beat the All Blacks. They've beaten the Springboks. They're at home to the All Blacks this weekend. We'll see how they go there. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just over egging it. But I don't know. If there's another coach like him.
He's right up there. He's got to be right up there with maybe Graham Henry. Although I suppose he wasn't unbelievable with Wales. Like, you'd have to say Gatland. Gatland's record's unbelievable. What he did with Wales for so long. And
Gatland over Joe, come on.
No, I think, but he was brilliant with Wasps as well. You'd have probably Wayne Smith up there, Bob Dwyer back in the day. Like, there's lots of outstanding coaches that kind of would have changed the game. But agree with you, like, he's certainly one of the special ones, I think. And outstanding. Obviously, the current, like Rassie, I think regardless of what you think about South Africa and how good they to be that consistently good with them. I know they've got incredible resources, but still, it takes a special coach to be that consistent with them and to be able to change game plans and change coaching staff at different junctures. So, yeah, it's such an interesting conversation. So we've gone completely off topic talking about Joe. I don't know how, but it just was interesting to hear, and it's always interesting to watch the best at work, and he certainly is one of the best, and to get ideas from how they're doing things, because generally he's on the cutting edge of what's happening with the game. He's usually figured some angle out where he can get an edge. So I suppose that's why we're bringing.
And
him
you
up
said it, Luke. And I'd love to just sit in one of his like Monday meetings or something, and just like see the forensic detail he picks apart.
Not if you were playing Trimby, as we well know.
Well, if you went it's grand. But yeah, if you feel like you left a couple of things out there's a couple of mistakes. I remember actually going to him. I was thinking about this recently because of the Chicago game, obviously the rematch in a few weeks' time. I remember that week I was in Chicago for that game. I played in that game. And I remember in the captain's practice, or maybe the second session in the week, I made a mistake. I went to the wrong rock, And I remember I was so stressed out after the session. I was like, I'm in so much trouble here. I actually went to him in anticipation of a meeting, and I went, Joe, listen, when you watch the video, you're gonna see something you're not gonna like. It's me. I'm at the wrong rock, and just get ahead of this. I'm really sorry.
just don't embarrass me in front of the group.
Yeah, I was like, I honestly, I think I kind of like he was taken aback. He was like, no one ever does this, but it worked. I didn't get a hard time. Got away with it.
But was it as mentally stressful, Andrew, as say some of the current players that have spoken about it and how taxing it might have been to play in that system? Like, I know you obviously thrived in it and it made you a better player, but like when you hear the lads talking about their experience, does it tally with what you found?
When you're stressed, you're learning. For me, anyway, when I was put under pressure from Joe, it's because I'm being uncomfortable, and you'll be uncomfortable for a number of weeks, and then all of a sudden you'll get gradually more and more comfortable with what he expects, and then you start to expect what he expects. You get brainwashed over the course of a Six Nations, but the impact it had on me was it felt, and I would have no way to kind of prove this or demonstrate this or tangibly whatever. I just know the feeling of me, the confidence I had before and after a Six Nations campaign with Schmidt. I felt like a new player. I honestly felt so confident, so good. I just knew the game inside out, and I was so well prepared. And that was, so I didn't go immediately from this to this. It happened pretty quickly, but by maybe 2 or 3 weeks into Joe Schmidt campaign, either he relaxes, maybe he does relax a little bit, or you just start to think the way he thinks and behave the way he expects you to behave. So at that stage, I wasn't stressed anymore. I knew all the plays inside out. I did everything he wanted me to do. I recovered well. Everything was so professional because that was the environment that was expected. And so it didn't stress me. That stressed me at the start. And then once I got up to speed, I wasn't stressed anymore.
It's interesting. It does appear that when he's gone into Australia, he has maybe dialed back a little bit on that, just from what I've heard. I know Rory O'Connor was mentioning being over in Australia and talking to him a little bit and hearing from maybe the Australian journalists who were covering him that he maybe isn't quite as intense as he was with the Irish players who maybe would be more used to that level of coaching and that level of detail, and maybe Australians different kind of personality set. So maybe he has altered a little bit, which would be interesting to know.
Sure, he has all the experience that he's had. Every experience that he had is going to contribute to what he already knows and will challenge his philosophy. I'm sure he's like the rest of us, changing and kind of altering his view and his kind of rugby and coaching philosophy.
We're really going off topic, and with every topic I go off, we're cutting another province from the running order. But look, we can get to them next week.
Let's go Ulster next.
Yeah, we'll get Ulster next, just so we can get them in while we have Andrew Trimble here with us. But I do want to. You just mentioned Chicago, and I just wanted to quickly ask you about that. Was that as good crack as it looked? Like that looked like one of the all-time great games to play in. The unbelievable atmosphere, as you said, like the rematch happening in a couple of weeks' time brings back those memories of how. Because New Zealand were coming in on this almighty winning streak. They were playing scintillating rugby. Like Bowden Barrett was in his first of back-to-back World Player of the Years at the time. He was just playing out of this world. Like, how strong a memory is that? Like, is it as vivid now? Was it as good fun as it looked from like someone who's watching it?
Yeah, and the nostalgia attached to it. You kind of rewrite the history in your head a little bit, and sometimes people tell stories about that week, and I don't know if I remember actually what happened or someone telling the story or me telling the story. So, that all kind of merges what's actually real, I suppose. But yeah, my memory of it was incredible. We were really well prepared. We were quite confident going into the game. Having never beaten New Zealand ever in our history, it's strange that we actually had a confidence about us. And it felt like, because of everything that had happened 3 years earlier, was it? It felt like
13,
It felt like, okay, well, we've done, I was going to say the hard, but certainly one part of it. We've been able to be competitive. We're playing incredible phase play. We're being adding a lot of deception, really threatening defenses. And I feel like we can do that. And then it's just that last bit, backing it up by going again. And I felt like at halftime, Johnny Sexton and Rory Best pleaded with us, please, lads, just keep playing rugby. We have to keep playing rugby. We didn't take their advice for the first 15, 20 minutes of the second half. Inevitably, that kind of onslaught from New Zealand came, and then we pushed on. But it felt like there was something very, very special and unique about the week because on the pitch, we were ready to go. We were thought like we were very, very well prepared, but we just had a mindset. We were going there confidently, having fun that week. The Cubs, the World Series, all going out for pizzas during the week. I remember the early in the week, everybody was jet lagged. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning or something. And Jamie texted into the group and said, "Anybody fancy a brew?" Within 10 seconds, there was about 15 replies, and we all went downstairs and we all went across the road and got coffee together. I just felt like it's a little bit exciting here, and that kind of feeling made its way all through the week, and then we capped it off at the end. And again, we've retrospectively maybe made it more exciting because we now know what happened.
And am I remembering it right? Did you smash someone over the line and get a 5 metre scrum for Ireland? Or you had some big defensive play? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, I had a couple of big defensive plays. As you know, Lucky, that was the main string to my bow.
One of them.
But yeah, a couple. Yeah,
that try record speaks for itself.
yeah, a couple of big kind of defensive moments, and one or two where you kind of hinge in, and whether it's a good player or a bad player depends on how skillful the player is and if they can get the ball away. And on that occasion, it was a couple of back rowers, I think, kind of hit them hard enough that the ball squirted out, the ball went forward, or anyway, there was a couple of moments like that. Those were kind of my bigger contributions to that day.
Yeah, it's something I was just thinking about there. I remember, yeah, I can't wait for the game in a few weeks' time. I actually bought, when the tickets went on sale, I bought two, hoping to go, and then realised, well, I have a newborn baby at home and I'm probably not going to be able to swing this, so I sold them on. I only had them in my possession for about 24 hours before sense came, but that was because I was thinking of that great time in 2016. And you described Chicago there, and I kind of wanted to be part of that, but no, alas, unfortunately, my tickets went on to somebody else. But
yeah, I heard Joe give you a hard time about spending too much time watching rugby when you've got a newborn at home. It feels like Joe is kind of signalling how conscientious a father he is by giving you a hard time.
Virtue signaling.
He's virtue signaling. Yeah, it's my job. As I keep explaining to the newborn, he can't understand me, but it's my job. I have to do it.
You'll get it one day.
Exactly. No, but great memory to be part of, and a great occasion. Okay, we'll go back to the running order now because we've gone off topic. Yeah, we'll go to Ulster. Ulster 42, Dragons 21. Andrew, 6 tries, bonus point win. I was saying last week, it was kind of one Ulster had to have with a bonus point because their fixtures are pretty tricky. They have Edinburgh away. They have a trip to South Africa soon as well. I think then they have the Bulls in between that in Ravenhill. So one they had to have, but one they had quite well, albeit, conceding a try after. I feel like this has been a reoccurring thing in Ulster games in Ravenhill in the last 6 months or so of last season as well. Conceding a try very, very, very early on. 10 seconds in for Aaron Wainwright, which was kind of mad. But ultimately kind of we're well on top for the remainder. What was your assessment of the opening night? What's your assessment of where they are generally? Mark Sexton has come in. I thought you could see his fingerprints a little bit. The attack looked, fairly fluid. Where are Ulster at the moment in your head?
Yeah, I thought, first of all, that Wainwright try after 10 seconds, I think that looks familiar because literally that has happened. Teams have scored early against Ulster, but also Ulster are... What's typical is there's always a couple of lapses in concentration and they let their guard down. Yeah, anyway, that is kind of marred Ulster's performances over the last 12 months anyway. Nice to see them bounce back a little bit. I think I would be quite excited about Mark Sexton, Willie Falloon, Jimmy Duffy. I feel like there's a lot of innovation, a lot of kind of thoughtfulness in that coaching panel. Richie obviously kind of steering the ship there as well, but those guys in particular, I'm not sure what age Jimmy is, but the other two are young, exciting coaches. And I feel like maybe in 5 years' time, we might be saying, oh, these coaches went on and kicked on, and this could be the start of their coaching journey. I think we saw Willie Fullen's defence. Yes, Mark Sexton, I think we saw the beginnings of what he can contribute in the phase play and the shape and the tip-ons and the out the back. Scrappy, a little bit scrappy at times, but you can see the beginnings of that shape and everybody getting comfortable and going wide. It's nice to balance that up with Cormac Ezechukwu just carrying the ball straight and direct, Handy carrying the ball straight and direct as well, because you obviously need both elements of that. I suppose where I saw more of a point of difference was defensively. I thought there was something about their language, their body language. There was they were vibrant, they were excited. Look, you remember in the past, Andy Farrell talks about bounce and your body language and the impact it has on the people around you, and then it creates this intangible. Felt like Willie Falloon got a little bit of that. Very early days, first game of the season, Dragons at home. They didn't win a game last year, but it felt like a bit more line speed coming, a bit more contestant at rock time. They just look more vibrant and kind of excited to defend, which I think is going to give them a little bit more of a steeliness that's going to serve them well, because I think that's been something they've missed over the last 12 months.
Yeah, Luke, do you want to come in there? Anything about Ulster that stood out to you?
Yeah, I actually liked. So look, obviously the lapse of concentration, we've kind of covered that, but I thought they were good. Like, I mean, the key thing for us, we were talking about them last week, Trimmy, and we said, like, themselves and Munster to a certain degree, like they need to keep people fit. Like, that is just so important for them that they keep, like, Hendy is so important for this team. And he just can't, the poor guy. And in fairness, he's throughout his career, he's had just trouble with injuries all the way through, really. If they can get him on the pitch week on week, I think he's a really important player for this team. I really like the look of that back row. You obviously add in Augustus as well, but I mean, Izuchuku, I thought was, he is powerful. He's a good athlete. He is so exciting. He's a guy they want to keep on the pitch. Timoney's been pretty solid for Ulster for quite a while, is a lovely player. And I thought McCann had some great carries. Looks strong and they'll try, bursting through guys. Like, he will be a lovely addition. If they can keep those guys fit, they have enough power and oomph behind them. And I did like, so a lot of the stuff that maybe people were talking about is the stuff out the back. Mikey Larry had some lovely, lovely touches. I mean, he's a real handful when he gets, when he gets ahead of steam up. You really have to catch him early because his footwork is electric. And he's got some lovely handling. We know, obviously, can play a little bit of 10 as well. Electric player. But to me, what I liked is that I thought there was periods where they were very direct. Really liked that. I saw some nice carries from Tom O'Toole. I thought they didn't overcomplicate it. I thought, at different points. I think Herring's a real leader for this team. He had some very physical interjections as well. So there was lots to be positive about. And it was good. Look, yeah, nice to see the eye-catching moments and some nice tries. But I liked a little bit of physicality with me. For Ulster, that's the bit maybe that I think when they get to the top teams, that's maybe where you see them kind of wilt at times and not be able to kind of compete. And I think, Andrew has talked about Willie Falloon. I mean, not many harder blokes than Willie Falloon. As we were laughing about it last week, as he was on my school's team, Willie. So he's a great guy. But hopefully he can bring that hard edge to this Ulster team, because defensively, kind of similar to Connacht, I mean, a pretty horrendous record. So if they can get that, if they can pull that back from last season and add a little bit more in the attack, all of a sudden, things could turn around quite quickly and they get a bit of momentum behind them. And rugby is a funny game that way. You don't always have to have superstars, like Leinster. You could be a really, really top quality team with just, but I think Ulster have enough of that, with just turning a few very important cogs on a pitch, whether that's defensiveness and kind of that physicality. If you get those two things right, you're competitive straight away to me. And these guys, Ulster have finishers. They've got quality. You've got your Larrys, you've got your Stockdales, you've got these guys who can finish tries. You've got McCluskey there, who's a big leader for this team. So they're all, to my mind, top quality professional rugby players. And they should be, if they can get them on the pitch week on week, Ulster will be far. Will they be okay this year? I think they'll be fine this year. They'll certainly qualify, to my mind. This team has enough quality to do that.
Yeah, Andrew, because one of my frustrations is that, like, when I look at the Ulster team, I don't see like a team like devoid of talent. That they only won 5 of their league games last year. I think they had 5 wins and a draw. Like, if you go through like every line of the team and say this year they have, say, Angus Bell coming into the front row and Augustus in the back row, but even like the guys who are already there, like Izuchuku, Balakoon, Stockdale, Hume, Michael Lowry, Nick Timoney, these guys are good players. And like, oftentimes there was a game away to Benetton in particular, because I take Luke's point about fitness, but there was a away game to Benetton last year where they had like their full team out and got hammered. They got hosed. And I'm like, that should not be happening with the talent that's there. Like, no one can tell me, I can't say looking at that team sheet that team shouldn't be able to go to Benetton and win, or certainly not lose by like 15 points, which is what I think they went down by. And that happened once or twice last year, where they had they did have their strongest team out and they still got hammered, or they still didn't put in a performance.
They gave up good leads, big leads at times. And they were the bits for me, Trimby. I was kind of thinking that screams of kind of just mental lapses, or just not being focused at the right times for kind of long periods in games. And once they lost momentum, they feel like a team that maybe, I don't know, lacks a little bit of belief or something.
Yeah, I see that. I see all that, definitely. And typically the conclusion you come to there would be, well, maybe it lacks some leadership, or a couple of senior players say, listen, lads, let's be pragmatic about this. Let's get back to basics. Whatever it is that you need, whatever psychologically, to get back into a game. And then I sort of thought, well, the appearances that this is an Ulster side with lots of kind of young backs anyway, a lot of young, but they're not young. There's a lot of experience there. Even someone like Nathan Doak, we're talking about. Now, I do think they're inexperienced at 9 and 10. That'll be a big ask. So I think they've got outside outside 10 and inside 9. I think they do have a lot of quality. 9 and 10, I think, is going to be a big challenge. But Nathan Doak's a good example. Like he's 25 years old. Like he should be a senior leader within that team. And I hope this is the year that he kicks on. He does become that, because I think he's capable of that. But yeah, it does feel like there's definitely been huge frustrations with Ulster over the last while. And like Will, you're talking about the momentum in a season, getting off that good start, crucial, perfect. Edinburgh were really poor against Zebra. Ulster go to Edinburgh on Saturday, and it feels like Edinburgh will probably bounce back. They'll probably get a big performance on the road, and they got hockeyed last game of the season there against Edinburgh. Feels like the season could go one way or another, and this happens a lot, doesn't it? You go, oh, this could snowball one direction or another. So then they got Bulls at home, and then they got to go to South Africa. If they beat Edinburgh, they'll probably continue that momentum, get Bulls at home, and then who knows? But if they don't beat Edinburgh, it can go the other direction very quickly. And then all of a sudden, they're reminded last season was tough, and we're back there again, and it feels difficult. So the margins are very, very fickle, and hope for their sake that they get off to a good start.
What's the feeling in Ulster today about Richie Murphy? Because if I was an Ulster fan, like, you could forgive an Ulster fan for thinking, like, Leinster have Jack Aber, Connacht hired Stuart Lancaster, Munster hired Clayton McMillan, the Chiefs, a guy who had been very highly regarded. I'm sure a lot of teams would want him. And not that Richie Murphy doesn't have a good CV, because his work at underage level is really strong, winning 2 Grand Slams with the Ireland team and bringing through a lot of players. But he's not the star name that some other provincial coaching tickets have. Like, are Ulster fans kind of maybe not, I suppose, maybe looking on enviously and wondering, well, why can we not get a star name as well? Is he under pressure maybe with that kind of hanging over him a little bit?
I'm not sure if he is, and yeah, it's nice to have a big name that a couple of other provinces have, but his track record in the 20s is pretty compelling. When he finished up with the 20s, you sort of thought, well, there's a lot of talent coming through. Of course that team's going to be successful, but since then last year they weren't successful. So as soon as he steps away, it doesn't look quite as rosy in there in terms of those pathways. So he obviously has a nice knack of developing young players, developing talent, and allowing them to kick on and thrive and kind of fulfill their potential. And that is exactly the kind of remit that he's going to look for at Ulster. And then supplement him with everything I said about Willie Falloon, Jimmy Duffy, Mark Sexton. Hopefully there's enough there for Ulster supporters to be excited about it, and hopefully they demonstrate that over this season.
It's a good point about Richie Murphy in the 20s, because like when they were winning the Grand Slams, you would have assumed, oh, these are like generational teams, and we're going to be seeing these guys playing provincial rugby week in week out. I think we're already seeing that there's not going to be this deluge of guys kicking on. I think the first of those teams in 2022, I think there's not many guys playing from there. Second one, obviously, Sam Prendergast, Brian Gleeson playing for Munster at the weekend, who looks a real prospect. But it's not as easy to just have them going in en masse. Like, say some of the French teams that won under 20s World Cups. You look back at those teams and you're like, wow, like some of these guys are playing week in, week out for the French national team. But in Ireland, it's just, I suppose, maybe with just 4 teams, it's not quite as quick and easy to bring through players. So maybe it was a better coaching job, as Andrew says, than we gave him credit for. Maybe we just thought to a degree that there was a really rich kind of couple of years there. But no, he's definitely, maybe looks even more impressive as the years go by.
I had kind of hoped as well, Trimble, with the financial kind of constraints there at Ulster as well. I really felt like he was the perfect guy to get in, because I was hoping that, as you said, Will, we haven't seen enough of those guys probably really kick through onto the next level. I was hoping that Richie would be able to maybe attract some of that young talent up to Ulster, as well as you say, develop some of the guys, some of the guys locally as well. I was hoping that, I thought that maybe was a reason why he was kind of brought in as well, aside from his coaching ideas and his kind of track record with Joe Schmidt and with the 20s. That was an area that I thought I'd see him maybe recruit a few more of those really kind of guys with a serious amount of potential, because you could see, like, it's still very hard to break into those other, to the 4 provinces. It's still hard to break through. You see those, as you said, you look at that Ulster team, you consider them kind of a younger team, but it's probably based really only on that halfback pairing, because everyone else is actually pretty experienced or deep into a professional rugby career, or deeper than we probably would give them credit for. So that's something that I expected maybe a little bit more, but maybe it takes a little bit of time for someone maybe has to sit in a bench for a year or two to go, oh, do you know what? There's nothing for me here in Leinster. I've got Dan Sheen and Ron Kelleher ahead of me, or whoever it is. Do you know, like, why I'm never getting a look in? So I wonder. Sorry, go on.
both sons anyway. Bring both your sons for a
Well, they're living in
start.
the house with you, so yeah, may as well.
Yeah, bring
Free
them
accommodation at
and we'll
least.
take it from there. But it is difficult. You always think, oh, the lure of lots of rugby, a lot more starts. Like Gus McCarthy's a terrible example, I suppose, of how that doesn't work. He just bides his time. Both those hookers got injured last autumn, and he's playing for Ireland because he's the next cab off the rank in Leinster, and he's in a good environment, and that environment develops these players. And he's a perfect example of how actually maybe that it's difficult to get the allure of other guys going elsewhere. I know there's been plenty of Leinster back rowers that Ulster have spoke to through the years, and they've stayed put, and they haven't kicked on. One or two have come up, and it hasn't quite worked out either. So it's there's probably not a really clear case study for come somewhere else, you'll get more game time. You might go back, or you might just kick on and play for Ireland that way, or develop your career like you hope. So it's a little bit tricky, isn't it?
Mm. Well,
Hard to know. Like, there's a few cases. Like, I mean, I remember Sean Cronin and Jerry Flannery went to Connacht and then kind of came back, and there's a few guys who kind of did that here and there. But you're right, maybe less so. I suppose Andrew Conway was a guy, is another. So there is a few here and there. But you're right. It can be tricky to lure guys away from playing for your home province. It's been your kind of dream to do that, and it's always hard. I think sometimes when you're there, as you say, you're only an injury away from kind of getting in. That's the other side of playing with, in a country where there's only 4 teams, is that someone gets injured. Like Dan Sheehan's out for a year, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden it's like, oh, actually, do you know what? We actually have another guy who's really good here. And you get a look at them. So yeah, it's not as clear cut as that. I just thought maybe he'd have that tight relationship with a few guys and be able to say, listen, like, there's a real opportunity here. You are a top quality player, but no one's going to see you. You're just going to be in the gym lifting weights. But maybe I just think differently about it. I don't know.
Andrew Conway is a great example. And then he turned around and said, actually, I was always a Munster supporter. Really? Didn't you go to school in Blackrock or something?
I hadn't noticed that when you were playing for Blackrock, actually. Yeah, but anyway, yeah.
You're right about Gus McCarthy, though, Andrew. Like, he was the 5th choice Leinster hooker at the start of that last season and ended up playing for Ireland in November. So it's not as if he even had to wait until the summer to make his breakthrough. He literally made it in 2.5 months.
Yeah, and all the other guys who are in the similar position, they go, well, this is the best way for me to kick on and play for Ireland.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see if he can attract anyone up north. There was a school of thought, I think, that Stuart Lancaster might be able to attract some guys out west as well, given his previous relationships with Leinster, so it'll be interesting to see that as well. So I agree with you on Ulster, Andrew. I think the Edinburgh game is huge on Friday night, because with the Bulls and 2 games in South Africa to come, it could be a 1-4 record. Things going badly, but it could be 3-0 as well if they can get a good win maybe on Friday night. I think we'll leave Munster until next week. I think we probably only have time for one last province, and we'll give Munster first billing next week, and we can give a good 2-match tenure of Clayton McMillan's reign and maybe assess them then. Because I do want to quickly talk about Stuart Lancaster's start with Connacht, Luke. 26-15 over Benetton. Their attack looked pretty good. They scored 4 tries, but for me it was the defence that impressed me. Like, I know they conceded 2 tries. One at the end when the game was gone. I think it was a forward pass as well. I feel like if that game was still in the melting pot, they would have gone back and maybe had a look at that offload. But I thought their defence was better. I thought they tackled. They're kind of meaner in defence, kind of tougher in the tackle, stronger, driving guys back. Like, did you see any of that, or what did you make of that area? Because it was kind of the real growth area going into the season.
Yeah, we talked about it last week, Will, didn't we? Like, their defensive record. I think it was it only the Dragons that were worse? I think, like pretty horrendous, and it was kind of. It was interesting to hear Lancaster talking about there actually was quite a good base there. He thought Fardy had done some kind of good work, so it just needed to be kind of tinkered with a little bit. So, look, the key thing for them is going to be that consistency. Like, for me, it's an obvious place to start with as being a positive, because they only conceded 15 points. Kind of below what the average was last year, in the last couple of years. We know they've got some good attack. We know they've got some kind of flair players, and they've got, big ball carriers, exciting players. But defensively, for whatever reason, they just couldn't get it together, and they would collapse at different parts and, really start conceding tries quite badly. And that needed to change very, very quickly. I mean, they talked about, you could see in the media them talking about, when he first came in, and kind of literally they went straight in day one into a, fairly deep dive on what happened last season and how they finished the season. So you'd have to think, for me, if I was Lancaster coming in, that was item number 1 to get fixed. If they can clamp down on how many tries they're conceding, and keep that flair and that attacking ability that they have, again, similar to Ulster, they're kind of, one or two strings that you pull, and all of a sudden things look very, very different, and you become difficult to beat. And you're kind of going down to Galway, new stadium, bigger crowds, later on the season, obviously when they open it up properly. Could be a windy night still, and all of a sudden Connacht are looking pretty formidable. It's not that long ago that this team was actually, a really, really difficult team to beat, and was consistently finishing, in the qualification kind of places at the end of the season. So, I can't wait to watch them. I think he's I hope he kind of goes and delivers on his potential there, and could start nearly a bottom up type revamp of Connacht and re-energize the whole place. I think there's real potential to go and do that with all the positive stuff that's happening, the new training facilities, new stadium, all that kind of stuff, young players down there. And it would be great to see him nick one or two of the younger guys who are sitting in the gym, working very hard, who have lots of potential, and bring them down there from whatever province he picks them from, and instill his kind of, I'm not going to say magic, but those kind of those big kind of foundations, kind of similar to a Joe Schmidt type coach, where he can bring you to a new level, and still that confidence in that you can go and do it, have you unbelievably well prepared, and I think change the course of a few people's careers. I think he's the kind of coach that has that ability to do that. So I've really heaped the pressure on him, but I think he's well able. I think from everything you gather from behind the scenes, he's a super intense guy, but really, really great guy to work with, and super guy to learn from. Always open and adaptable to making himself and the guys around him better. So really, really excited to see what he can produce from this kind of young bunch of Connacht players.
The only negative, sorry, Andrew, before to last again, is one of my pet peeves with Connacht has been missing poor kicks at goal, and they missed one. I know they only missed one of their 4 conversions, but it was a bit of a gimme kind of. Sean Naughton touchdown almost next to the post, and Cathal Ford has pulled it wide, and that's just, if it's a touchliner, fair enough, you might miss one or two of those a game, but like they have this habit of just like leaving points out there. So that's just one thing I really hope they can clamp down on. Like I know it's not maybe Sir Lancaster's forte, he's not a kicking coach, but I really hope that's something he's hot on. Sorry, Andrew, you're going to come in.
Just it sounds like, yeah, he reps things, he gets the intensity high, he gets guys more prepared for the game of the weekend based on the way they train. Sounds like everything you hear about Lancaster, he just runs that session so well. Everybody gets so much from it. It's so rich. But on top of that, it sounds like he spends a lot of time with the guys, and he really works on their rugby IQ. He really makes sure everybody understands the rationale for making the decisions and why we're repping this and why we're doing that. A couple of guys who've been in that environment, that's what they would say about him. He makes sure everybody understands, because yourself, you're always more motivated if you understand why I'm doing something, rather than just being robots and doing something because someone's told us this is going to work or it makes sense. So I thought that was an interesting addition to what, by all accounts, Lancaster does. He makes sure that guys understand the rationale and the why behind what they're doing.
And Andrew, like when the attack is kind of in the shape it's in, which I think we all think with Connacht is pretty good. Like it hasn't really been an issue for them scoring points, and it does seem the defence is the problem. Is that kind of more of a low hanging fruit? Like, would you expect a coach to be able to go in there and kind of get that up to speed a lot quicker than if he had to come in and say the defence was good, but the attack just couldn't score any points? So that might be maybe a longer term fix. Like, should you see kind of results quicker?
Yeah, that would be my impression. There might be defence coaches out there who, it's more complex, and there's more things you maybe haven't appreciated the complexity of implementing a new defensive system. But for me anyway, it's a lot more complex implementing a new kind of phase play and shape and attack structure. For me, it's to be fair, some of it's the model, like what's the defensive system, and some of it's getting guys fired up to get off the line, to have that vibrancy and that body language that says they're going to smash lads and they're going to bring that intensity, and not to be like pub talk, but some of it's about that model and the structure, and some of it's about just having an energy in defense, and that's probably the 2 elements of the defensive coach: technical and then just emotional intelligence. Get tapped into something that's going to get something else out of players that you haven't otherwise seen, and we haven't seen that from Connacht.
Well, that's what.
And if the group is tight, Will, this is to tie in on Andrew's point as well. I think if the group is tight, like it really, really helps. Like all the best teams that I'm sure Andrew would probably say the same thing, is you had that kind of real connection. So you didn't mind putting the body on the line for the person next to you, or bailing them out or something, or hanging tight on a poach just a half a second longer to get guys, helps other people in the line. that a lot of that stuff, those things are kind of small. They feel like intangibles, and they probably are to a certain extent. But I think the more of those little wins you get, that little bit of half a percent more aggression, the half a minute, a half a second longer hanging onto the ball on the ground, where you know you're going to take a big hit for the guys. That little bit of extra effort when you're knackered, you say, you know what, I think there's a bit of danger there. I'm gonna run. I'm starting to sprint early. I'm seeing something early, just in case. I'm gonna expend that extra little bit of energy, a little bit earlier than maybe I would normally, to get myself in a good position. All those little things have little knock-on effects, I think, and that's the bit that you do have to. I think as a defense coach is probably. I'd say it's probably the harder thing to coach into guys, is to get that sense of cohesiveness and that togetherness that you need to be a really great defense. Like, all the great teams have that, I think, and that's probably the bit I always feel like there's defensive systems there, like, and I think both defensive systems work. I think obviously there's a way bigger tilt towards getting off the line harder, and that's so important. But you could still see what New Zealand did to the best attack in the World Cup. And that wasn't the same model. That wasn't getting off the line, just firing off that South African kind of model. That was a slightly different one. And that works because there was just that tightness, that cohesiveness together. So I just wanted to add to that point, because I think it's a really great one that Andrew makes.
Yeah, and the point about kind of the bounce or the body language, like, that's what jumped out to me as well. Like, they had a real long defensive set early in the second half when they were just up on their feet quickly, driving Benetton back. And like, Benetton actually had a good team out. Like, when that team was named, they do have, and especially a good back line too. So I thought that was a really good, I suppose, sign of what we might be able to expect over the next couple of weeks. I think we're just about out of time, guys. Munster fans, probably not a lot there for you tonight, unfortunately. We will get to you next week. As I said, you got a 34-21 win to start the Clayton McMillan era. Brian Gleeson was good. Dan Kelly was sharp with a try in his debut. Craig Casey looked good. So there was a lot of positives there. We will get into all that in depth next week. But for now, Andrew, thanks so much for joining us. Your first time ever on the left wing. I hope you enjoyed it.
Nice one. I'll see you in 10 years' time.
If we make it to season 20, you'll be 50 then. Luke will be always 50. I'll be 40. So yeah, look, we can reconvene then.
It'd be great to see you, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Cheers, lads.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, see you soon. Bye.